Welcome to Follow Your Joy podcast, where intuition is the doorway to your elevated creativity, more joy, and prosperity. I'm your host, Marla Diane, and I've been living an intuitive life for decades as a creative. That translates to transforming creative entrepreneurs' lives for over 27 years through two businesses as a business strategist and a life designer. And prior to that, an entertainment publicist and talent manager. Follow Your Joy is an entrepreneurial resource for creatives sharing their challenge to victory stories through the lens of listening to their intuition. It's time to make joy your inner GPS for life and business decisions rather than lean on your logic and reason first. You'll not only be following what is most authentic for you, but you will live the beautiful life meant just for you. Want to learn how to access, trust, or up-level your intuition? Join me in the conversation to find out how. Well, hello, creatives. So I want to give you some context here because this is a pretty important, not that other ones are not, but this is a pretty darn important episode. So to give you context, in my vision for this podcast, the ultimate guest and storyteller that I aspired for you, my creative audience, was to have several Disney animators and Imagineers, right, through the life of the podcast. Well, today is the start of that vision coming true. Yeah. And to say that I'm excited and grateful is definitely, obviously, an understatement. So when your heart is in your dream, you can make it happen no matter what. And this is the motto of my guest. So Saul Blinkoff's own story and how much he believed in himself and persevered against high odds, right, to get a coveted Disney animation internship, right, during his college years became the heart and core of his success as an animator, right, Hollywood producer, filmmaker, inspirational global keynote speaker, and a podcast host, right? So I am so pleased to bring Saul Blinkoff, this award-winning director-producer who's worked on animated films and shows for over 20 years with Disney, DreamWorks, Netflix, and Amazon, among many others. And he's a happily married father of four. So I want to give a warm, beautiful welcome to Saul Blinkoff. Welcome to Follow Your Joy.
Hey, thank you so much, Marla. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I love the title of your podcast.
Thank you.
And, what I love about it is when I hear the word joy, it makes me feel it's an emotion. And so many podcasts out there are talking about practical steps to becoming successful and abundance and money. And it's a lot about those physical things. But this isn't something you touch. Joy is something you feel. And I have a feeling that most of your listeners are here because that's really what they want. I think that's what we all want, right? It really connects all of us because we think that if I do these things, if I get that money, if I get that dream job, then I will feel joy. But ultimately, we really can feel joy right now, right? Joy should never be contingent on any outside experiences. Joy, true joy, in my humble opinion, is really a choice. And I really thank you for sharing your messages, and I also acknowledge all of your audience for showing up because there's so many things that pull us in different directions. So the fact that all of you have shown up to this podcast to follow Marla down this journey of creativity and joy, you should all be commended for being here.
Oh, wow. Can I take that and put that in my website? It's wonderful. Boy, you absolutely, you nailed it. Yeah.
Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you so much. So terrific. So before we segue into your story, and it's a pretty remarkable one, everybody, and what makes you you, is I'd like to give you a proper introduction and a little bit of backstory. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So Saul began, right, his career as an animator for Walt Disney Studios on hit films like, you're gonna love this, everyone, Pocahontas, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Milan and Tarzan. He directed films Winnie the Pooh Springtime with Roo and Kronk's New Groove, and developed Tinkerbell, Fox and the Hound 2, Brother Bear 2, and Cinderella 3, part 3. Saul went on to direct high-profile commercials for Best Buy, Dunkin' Donuts, ESPN, Subway, Mercedes-Benz. Oh my God, the list is long, right? And has consulted for animation studios internationally in London and Tel Aviv and Toronto and Seoul and Dublin and China and my gosh, Philippines. Oh my, yeah. He's directed Disney's animated show, also, those of you with cute little kids, Doc McStuffins, and did supervising director and consulting producer roles for Amazon and consulting director for Netflix and supervising producer on the award-winning DreamWorks series Madagascar, right? A little wild. So
That's
you
right.
can find all his credits. There's a lot more, everybody, at his site, saulblinkoff.com, which of course I'll put in the show notes, and IMDb. So he now travels the world speaking on stages, doing online workshops and classes, and speaking about clarity, speaking about living out your dreams and resilience, right? Finding the meaning in your life. And let me tell you, he is the epitome of that. He is the embodiment of what he teaches. So here's where we're at is I found Saul really listening to his interview on Jess Ekstrom's Amplify podcast just in November, right? I was taking her 5-day keynote speaker boot camp. And at the time, and I wanted to get to know her more. So I went to her podcast and there was this interview with this Disney animator. I'm like, Saul Blinkoff, who's this guy? And I'm listening to this Saul. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's amazing. Listen to
Mm.
how he's talking about humanity and how he's, taking his own story and turning it into impact. I'm like, okay, this is fabulous. So of course, I was pretty mesmerized and I reached out and I'm like, okay, God, come on. Make this happen, right? Make this happen. And about a month later, it was a yes. And you should have seen me, Saul.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Well, I'm literally like, I'm looking at my dog and we did
You're so sweet. Oh, I'm so happy. Well, that's just a great lesson for all of us. You got to put yourself out there, right? There's no can't. You got to try. It's not up to us, the outcome,
it.
right?
That's it. You
You
have
got
to.
to make your effort, right? The outcome's not up to us. We just have to make sure we give it 100%. The worst for me is in a tragedy when I meet young people in
Mm,
their 20s or younger that have already given up on their dream because they hear that it's competitive or difficult, you know? And I'm like, look, you're too young to be cynical and a pessimist. You haven't had enough life experience to experience failure. And by the way, failure is only an opportunity to grow and learn more about ourselves. True?
yep.
Right? So
100%.
you're just the fact that you made an effort to get me onto this, and which was so easy for me. I'm like, absolutely. With a title of a podcast like that,
Of your joy.
how would I want to be anywhere else today? So thank you for having me.
Love it. Thank you. In fact, I remember I was looking through some of your Instagram interviews. I think you were on, was it USC campus? And you were
Hmm.
interviewing these kids with this very kids, college kids,
Right.
with
Kids.
this very topic,
Yeah,
right? With this very topic. And I know that you coach
that's right.
one
That's
of
right.
that sector too.
Yeah.
So why having you, on the podcast, obviously, why it means so much to my own life, is that I've been a Disney girl since childhood, right?
Um,
Since childhood, when I grew up with Walt Disney, right?
yeah.
And lived in San Fernando Valley. I'm a Valley girl, and
Yep.
my family were all creatives. And my father, who was the lead creative, he really looked up to Walt Disney. And every Sunday night, what were we watching?
Yeah.
The
Wonderful
Wonderful
World
World of
of
Disney,
Disney. Oh yeah.
right? When it
And
was
Walt
black
would
and white,
and Walt would come right up on the front of the show and he would talk right to us, right?
right to us, right?
Yeah.
And we literally, I remember seeing it go from black and white to color.
Yep.
I mean, I'm
Amazing.
kind of dating
Amazing.
myself, but
Amazing color. Yeah, when it came out.
unbelievable. I remember
Amazing.
we thought it was amazing that it went from this black and white TV show. Oh my God, there's color now. We can actually see it.
Wow. Wow.
So yeah, we were brought up around that. And of course, Disneyland was fairly new back in the 60s and 70s. So we
Hmm.
would go at least two, if not three times a year.
Yep.
It's constant. We were always going. So to this day, I mean, Walt Disney's, visionary traits and impact on humanity really runs through not only my life, but everything I do in my coaching business,
Mm.
right? The creative, right?
Oh yeah. Oh
Vision.
yeah.
Okay, so let's now share this really inspiring story. So give us a glimpse, right, of what happened in your childhood that led up to that really defining moment in your sophomore year in college
Hmm.
when you almost gave up on your dream.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So look, for me, it started out. I was a kid that loved to draw. I was 6, 7 years old. I used to draw. I used to draw on everything. I used to draw on the walls with my mother's lipstick. That's true. When I ran out of wall space, I would draw on my twin sister's forehead. And I would use the Sharpie marker because it lasted longer, right? Isn't that what every artist wants? They want their artwork to exist long after they're gone.
Yeah.
So I used the Sharpie because it lasted for 2 weeks. So look, I wanted to be an artist. That was my first passion. And quite often I'll meet people and they'll say to me, Saul, I've heard your story and I'm inspired by your story, but I don't know what I want to do yet. And those of you that are parents, you know what it's like when you ask your kid who's 5 or 6 years old to get out of the pool, right? They're swimming, you're on vacation, you're somewhere, and they're in a pool, and you say, okay, you got to get out. And what do your kids never do? They never get out, right?
Like, no, we don't want to.
Right. So then you do the countdown, right? Okay, you guys, you have 2 minute countdown, right? Whatever. But so why is it that they don't want to get out of the pool? Because they love it. And I think for all of us, one of the goals has to be to find an activity, a passion, whatever word you like, that we can occupy ourselves with, that you forget about the clock. You forget about the time. You're enjoying it so much. It doesn't mean it's not going to be difficult. It doesn't mean it's not going to be hard work. And there's going to be parts and days that you're going to struggle through it. There will be. But at the same time, you want to find something that you love and that you love to do. And for me, it was really drawing. I was going to be an artist when I grew up. And then I was 11 years old. I went to the movies and I saw a movie that changed my life. And by the way, I grew up in New York, so I was very far from Hollywood. Those of you that are looking at your screen, I'll show you. I always have different toys around my desk. You can see this is a toy from the movie that I saw. Here we go.
Love
There's
it.
E.T. There's Elliot
Oh,
on the bike with E.T. This is my favorite little toy here.
oh.
My kids are like, Dad, grow up. I can't.
You're
I
like,
love it.
no, I'm not going to grow up.
No, right. That's right. So I see the movie E.T. and I was mesmerized. It was so emotional for me. It was so powerful. And what I loved about that movie is it was the story of a middle child. He has an older brother, younger sister. I also have an older brother, younger sister. He's a middle child. He's a kid of divorce. My parents were divorced.
Mm.
And it felt like a very empowering story where a child could do something important. And I was like, wow, that really called to me. And I remember at the end of the movie, I tapped my mom and I say, Mom, that's what I want to do someday. And my mom's like, what, you want to leave planet Earth in a
You know?
spaceship? And I'm like, no, 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 no. I want to make movies. And like I said, I grew up in New York. I didn't know any movie makers, nothing. So I went to a building that my kids and those of you who have kids, your kids will never go to. It's an outdated building. It's called a library. Yeah, that's where we used to go in the olden days, as my kids like to say, to get information right before the internet.
Yep.
So I go to a library and I get books on cameras, lenses, storyboarding. I found out that Steven Spielberg made films every weekend. So I got a film camera. My brother, sister, kids in the neighborhood, I start making movies, murder movies, monster movies. I tied my sister up to a tree really tight once for a movie. I remember at the end, afterwards, we go into the house to watch the movie. I'm showing my parents, and my mom's like, I like the movie, but where's your sister? I'm like, well, she's still tied to the tree. What's wrong? You know? So I knew I was going to be a filmmaker. And then I get to high school. And I'm in high school, and somebody says to me one day, what are you going to do when you get out of high school? And I said, well, I'm going to be a filmmaker. They're like, no, you don't want to do that. I said, yeah, I do. They're like, no, you don't, because if you want to do that, you're going to have to move out to Hollywood. And Hollywood is filled with strange weirdos. And they looked at me and said, you don't want to end up a weirdo, do you? And I said, no, I don't. And I will tell you guys, right then and there, I literally gave up on my dream because one person told me I would end up a weirdo. And look, of course, today I actually do live in Hollywood, and my four kids would tell you their dad is a weirdo. So much for that. But at that point in my life, I had given up on something I was passionate about. And it's amazing to me how many times in our lives that we allow other people to change the trajectory that we're on. We give other people that power over us. And if there's anything to walk away from this interview so far, it would be one idea. And by the way, if you show up to an interview like this, a podcast, you look at a TED talk, you read a book that inspires you, you got to be careful because inspiration in our lives comes and goes. Inspiration slips through our fingertips. You know, one moment you're inspired, and then 2 days later, wait, what did she say? What did Marla say? What did he say? You don't even remember it because it's one thing to be inspired, but it's another to live inspired. How do I take that inspiration and turn it into something practical? So if you hear something on this interview that speaks to you, you got to write it down. You got to write it down. You got to write it down. You got to go back to it again. And I'll share with you one idea that I learned from my own experience based on the fact that I had given up on my dreams so early. And that is never let anyone define how you feel about yourself. Now, just let those words sink in for a second. Never let anyone define how you feel about yourself. And some of you are listening to that and you're like, yeah, no, that makes sense. I know that already. You know that already. But yeah, what do you feel when you post something on social media and you don't get the amount of clicks, likes, hearts that you expected to get? Well, now you don't feel good about yourself. Like if you went on vacation, you took a picture of some creme brulee food that you love, dessert, and then you didn't get the likes on that picture. Does that mean you didn't like the dessert? At the end of the day, we need to be in control of how we feel about ourselves, and we need to be in control of the path that we're on every day. And so I'd given up on that dream. I was young, and I was giving up on Hollywood. My parents, who were amazingly supportive of Marla, they said, well, what are you going to do? I'm like, well, I'll go back to drawing. So my parents hired an art teacher to come to our home, a private teacher to teach me art. Amazing, amazing teacher. The first day, she sets up a bowl of fruit and she tells me to stare at it and not draw. I'm like, why am I staring at it? She goes, because I want you to learn how to see. Drawing is not about copying something. It's about learning how to see. What lens do we choose to see the world through? Those of you that are creative, you know what I mean. The way you look at lighting, a sunset, the colors of things. You walk into a room, it has an effect on us, the design of it. Some people walk into a room and they're just going right to the fridge. Some people are like, whoa, this environment makes me feel a certain way. We're more susceptible, we're more sensitive to the world around us. This was an amazing teacher I had. She taught me how to see differently. And then I would draw, pastel, painting, all these techniques. She actually told me, I'll never forget, she said, go to the cafes, the restaurants, wherever you go, and bring a sketchbook and draw people from life. So I would do that. And I would bring all my drawings back to her and I'd say, look, I drew this. This is a guy. This was at the cafe. This guy's eating a burger. And she looks at all the drawings. She's like, I like your drawings, but I noticed that none of the people have hands on your drawings. Did they not have hands at the restaurant? And I'm like, no, they had hands. She
Yeah.
goes, well, why didn't you draw hands on any of these people? I said, well, because drawing hands is difficult. She goes, oh, that's hard? Okay, good. Here's your homework. For the next 4 weeks, you're going to draw your hand from a different position every single night before you go to bed. And she taught me one of the most valuable lessons in life. Figure out what your weakness is and
Mm,
turn it into your strength.
mm,
And you know what happened 4 weeks later? I got really good at drawing hands. Look, I grew up in the 90s. You know what that means? It means I actually do know who the greatest basketball player to ever play is. Okay? It's Michael Jordan. And if you think it's LeBron, you can shut this podcast off right now and go to another podcast. Right, Marla?
right.
So Michael Jordan is in the NBA the first year. First year, he's already Air Jordan. He's amazing. And a Sports Illustrated writer comes up to him and says, Michael, you're a scoring machine, but you have no defensive game. You're not so strong on defense.
Mhm,
You know what Jordan could have said to the guy? Dude, could you get out of my face? I'm Michael Jordan. I make millions of dollars playing basketball. Could you get out of my face? But
mhm,
that's not what Jordan said.
mhm,
Jordan said years later in an interview
mhm.
that when that guy said that to him, Jordan thought one thing. Something I'm doing is giving that guy the perception that I don't have a defensive game. I guess I better work harder on defense. And he did. And 2 years later, one player was named Defensive Player of the Year, number 23, Michael Jordan. You know what made him great? One thing, singular mindset. How do I get out of my comfort zone and
Mhm,
turn my weakness into my strength? And in life, if you ever meet anyone in life who points out one of your flaws, you know what you should do? You should hug them
mhm.
because our flaws are nothing less than the answer key to growing. That's what my art teacher taught me. So I was going to be an artist. And then I went to the movies and I saw another movie that changed my life. So I'm going to hum this song, Marla. We'll see how well you know your Disney. Okay. Okay. What movie is this from? The seaweed is always greener in somebody else's lake. You dream about going up there. What is it?
Little Mermaid.
Boom, under the sea. There you go. Right? Under. My wife is like, please don't sing on the podcast.
Okay, Marion.
Please don't sing.
Okay.
So you got to sing the Disney music, right? It's the best music.
Yeah.
So, guys, I'm watching the movie The Little Mermaid and I'm mesmerized. And there's one moment in one song where Ariel sings. It's in the beginning. She's in her grotto. The song is called "Part of Your World." She wants to sing. She wants to learn about, people are walking and all this stuff. And she has one lyric. She sings, "What's a fire and why does it? What's the word?" Remember the next word?
No.
No, I got you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
She goes, what's a fire and why does it? What's the word? Burn. She says burn. And when she does that, if you think about animation, we always say at Disney, animators are actors, but with pencils,
Mhm.
right? We have to feel it. We have to feel the scene that we're in. Any first time animator would have listened to that lyric and probably animated Ariel. What's a fire? She probably has her hand under her chin, thinking, contemplating. Maybe that's what the pose should be. What's a fire and why does it? What's the word? All of a sudden, she remembers the word. She gets an idea. She smiles and says, burn. But that's not what Glenn Keane did. Glenn Keane, the greatest Disney animator who ever lived, who animated Pocahontas, Aladdin, The Little Mermaid, Tarzan, The Beast in Beauty and the Beast. Amazing animator. He did something so powerful. Ariel sings, what's a fire and why does it? What's the word? Then she takes her arms, puts them against her chest, arches her back, closes her eyes, and says the word burn as if there's a fire inside her that's
Mhm.
burning. And when I remember watching that movie, I'm like, that's how I feel. And I think all of us can relate to that. We all have a fire in us, and we all want to understand the world around us. Because the more that I understand the world around me, the more I understand my place in the world. And that spoke to me. First, it was E.T., and now it was The Little Mermaid. So I said to my parents, I'm like, Mom, why as the credits were rolling, I'm like, Mom, that's what I want to do someday. My mom's like, what? You want to fall in love with a fish? I'm like, no, no, no. I want to be an animator for the Walt Disney Studios. There I was, junior in high school, and I knew what my dream was. I just had a major problem is I had no idea how to do it. So often, Marla, I'll meet people and I'll ask them, what's your goal? And what's your dream? And some of them that are lucky enough that actually have that clarity, then I'll ask them the follow-up question. How are you going to accomplish it? You go to a great restaurant, you taste an unbelievable dessert, right? Tiramisu, whatever you want. You want to make it at home. You can do it if you have the recipe. I didn't have the recipe. I didn't know how to do it. Today, just go to the internet. You'll find out. I didn't have that. But what I did have, the most supportive mom in history. My mom took me to Disney World, not my older brother, not my sister, just takes me to Disney and is walking me around Disney just to ask the Disney cast members, that's what they call their employees, how her son could become a Disney animator. It was actually very embarrassing. We're getting on the It's a Small World boat
Oh,
ride, right? We're stepping on the boat, and the lady at Disney's like, "How many in your party?" We're like, two. We're stepping on the boat. My mom's like, "By the way, my son wants to be a Disney animator. Can you help him?" It was so embarrassing. The lady's like, "Ma'am, this is a boat ride. Like, we don't hire animators here."
yeah.
And she goes, "Look, if you want your son to work at Disney, you got to go to the Disney casting building." It was 4 minutes away from where we were in Disney World.
Oh,
Can you imagine how beautiful a Disney office building must look? It was amazing. Guys, I remember it had the doorknobs that looked like the ones from Alice in Wonderland, the ones that talk. They were made out of brass. I
yeah.
open up the doors, walk into this atrium, gold statues of Mickey, Donald, Pluto, Goofy. Even the air in there just had a smell. It was like pixie dust in the air, right? It had a smell. It was amazing. I sit there for the interview, and the Disney lady's like, "Can I help you?" I'm like, "Yeah, my dream is to be a Disney animator." She goes, "Well, we don't hire those here." I'm like, "Well, who do you hire?" She goes, "Well, we hire people that work the rides. You know, people that make the Dumbo ride go up and down." I'm like, "That's not my dream." She sees I'm discouraged. She goes, "Well, hold on a second." She walks out, comes back in 2 minutes later, and hands me a piece of paper. That piece of paper became the most valuable piece of paper I have ever held in my hands, other than my wedding contract. You tell my wife I said that. The piece of paper was a list of 8 schools, 8 art colleges that Disney recruits their artists from.
There you
And
go.
she looked at me and she said, "If you want to be a Disney animator, you need to go to one of these schools." Boom. That was it. That was the recipe. Now I had in my head what I saw as an equation. Saul plus go to one of these schools will equal dream.
Nice.
And so I ended up going to a school in Columbus, Ohio, the Columbus College of Art and Design.
Yep.
Amazing school. First day, I'm walking into my dorm room, and I notice next to my dorm room is this guy's room that has Mickey Mouse slippers. And I'm like, what kind of guy wears Mickey Mouse slippers, right? I don't judge, but it was a little strange for a college guy to have those big yellow slippers, the feet that Mickey Mouse has. Then I see he's got a Mickey Mouse bedspread, Mickey Mouse telephone, Mickey Mouse lunchbox, Mickey Mouse clock. It was like Mickey Mouse everywhere. I'm like, this guy is Mickey Mouse crazy. I look in the corner. He's not in the room, by the way, and I see his sketchbooks, and it says hands and feet. I'm like, hands? That's one of those things my art teacher used to have me draw. Let's see how good he is. I start looking through his book, and I see there's 100 drawings of Mickey hands from all different positions. I'm like, this guy is literally Mickey Mouse crazy. I turn to leave the room, but I bump into the guy whose room it is. Uh-oh, I'm busted. And I look at him and I go, "Hey, man, I'm sorry." And he looks at me and goes, "Huh, how you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm good. What's your name?" And he says, "My name's Jason, but people call me Mickey Mouse Jason." I'm like, "They call you what?" He goes, "Mickey Mouse Jason." I'm like, "I heard you. You have a Disney nickname?" He's like, "What? You don't?" I'm like, "No, I don't." I go back to my dorm room. I get on the phone with my mom, and I'm like, "Mom, if I'm going to fit in art school, I need a Disney nickname. I need Disney stuff." Guys, I was surrounded by Disney nerds. All I had over my bed was Michael Jordan posters. Like, I didn't have Disney anything. And I felt discouraged. 1 week later, I found out that a representative from the Walt Disney Studios was coming to our school. This was one of the original animators from Sleeping Beauty in the 50s.
Mhm,
His name was Bill Matthews.
mhm,
And I walk into this auditorium, and it's filled with over 600 students, every
mhm,
freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior.
mhm.
And Bill stands on that stage and he looks out to the audience and he says, "Before I tell you how to get into Disney, let me ask you all a question. How many of you want to be Disney animators?" Marla, every hand went up.
Yeah.
He goes, "Well, just so you know, out of the 600 of you in this room, maybe, just maybe 4 of you will ever work there. That's how competitive it is." And when he said that, I remember thinking one thing. I wonder who the other three are going to be. Because in life, you either believe in yourself that you can accomplish or you don't. It's black and white. And I don't mean what we post on social media or what we talk about. I mean, deep down, when we're alone, do we really believe that we can accomplish a level of greatness? And what? In every aspect of life.
Mhm.
Look, I'm a dad with 4 kids. Do I really think that I can become a great father, a great husband, a great spouse, a great human being? Do we really believe in ourselves? Every single one of us wakes up every day and we have a voice that whispers to us, you can do great things. You can grow. You can achieve your dream. You can meet your soulmate. You can make more money. All these amazing things that we crave to do every day. But then we have another voice that is screaming so much louder. Who do you think you are? That's not for you. Your life's going to be average. Your life's going to be mediocre. You're not going to go for your dream. It's for people like her. It's for people like him. It's not for you. And unfortunately, so often in life, we end up listening to that voice because it's louder. But at the end of the day, deep down, we need to listen to our internal voice that says to us, you know what we can do? We can change the world. We can change the world. Incredible that is, how empowering that is to have another day of life in front of us, to be able to create. And what do we get to create more than anything in the world? Ourselves. Because through creating art, you know who I'm creating? I'm creating me. That's the legacy we really leave the world. It's not what did I do while I was here, it's who did I become along the way.
Mhm.
And so when that animator stood on that stage from Sleeping Beauty, I believed in myself. And, you know, he said, if you want to get into Disney, you're going to need the internship. And in order to get the internship, you need hundreds of pages of drawings of humans and animals from life. That was it. And I'm like, that's it. And then he says, especially we want to see no drawings of cartoon characters. And especially he says, no drawings of Mickey Mouse. I was like, oh yeah. You see Mickey Mouse Jason like slouched in the back. He's like, oh boy, you know. But to me, that equation was growing. First, it was Saul, you got to go to this school. Now it's Saul, you need a portfolio filled with hundreds of drawings will equal your dream. So I ended up going to the zoo. I ended up going to walking around campus, drawing people all the time, drawing animals all the time. And I met this incredible guy, by the way, the first week in school who was drawing. He was an incredible artist. His name was Andy. And Andy was by far the greatest artist in the school because the guy never stopped drawing. And I will tell you, he soon became my best friend.
Mhm.
And just me choosing to be friends with someone like that made me a much better artist because who you choose to be friends with actually affects who you become. You guys should hit pause. You should write that down. You should write that down. Who you choose to be friends with affects who you become. And those of you that are parents, you know, we always try, you know, to make sure our kids are hanging out with people that we think are good influences, right? Especially when they're young. Like when our kids are like 1, 2, 3 years old, we can basically control who their friends are, right? But when they get older, I have a 20-year-old now. I can't control who she's friends with. But man, do I hope she picks the right influences. Okay, well, put that aside. Who are our influences? Who are we choosing to be friends with? What are their values? And if you meet anyone successful at life, not just successful at making a living, but successful at making a life, you know what you will see around them? They've got a group of people, a couple of people, maybe even one person that helps elevate them because who we choose to become friends with affects who we become. So Andy was my best friend. Sophomore year, Marla, I get my best drawings together. I put them in a portfolio and I wait. A couple weeks go by and I get a letter on Disney stationery. I'll never forget that day. Imagine getting an envelope with a Mickey embossed on the top left, my name printed on the front. Wow, the Disney company knows I'm alive. They got my name printed on an envelope. It was awesome. And then I open up the envelope. It says, Saul, thanks for sending your portfolio in, but unfortunately, you didn't make it. All right, fine. I got rejected. I didn't expect to get in the first time. It was just a process. As a matter of fact, I put that letter up over my desk. People were coming into the dorm room. They're like, wow, Blinkoff, the Disney company knows you're alive. It was awesome. Another year goes by, and Andy and I are drawing all the time. I'll never forget. One day we went to the zoo, freezing, bitter cold day in Columbus, Ohio. We get to the zoo with like 15 other students. And the second we get to the zoo, because it's bitter cold out there, we go to the little Wendy's cafe that they had in the zoo. We get hot drinks. And after a couple minutes, Andy and I go and we sharpen our pencils and we start drawing elephants. And it was just an amazing day. This elephant was walking back and forth, and we're drawing him, freezing, but drawing him. After 45 minutes, we go into the bus. I'm showing Andy the drawings I did. He's showing me what he did. And then I see one of the other guys. I'm like, hey, we never saw any of you at the elephants. What animals were the rest of you drawing? And this guy looks to me and goes, well, none of us left the Wendy's. I'm like, what do you mean you didn't leave the Wendy's? He goes, yeah, we couldn't leave. I go, why couldn't you leave? He says, because it was too cold. I go, it's too cold? He goes, yeah. I'm like, those are the greatest words I ever heard. When he said that, because I knew at that moment that I would outwork every single one of them. If I asked that guy that said too cold, let me ask you a question. Is your dream to work at Disney? Oh, yeah, it's my dream. You bought the Disney movies when they came out? Yeah, I grew up with Disney. I love Disney. It's my dream. You mean it's your dream until it gets difficult?
Mm,
It's your dream until it gets a little painful. You see, we all want to achieve
mm,
a lofty goal, but how many of us are actually willing to go through the pain? And the truth is, if we have the mindset that something is going to be difficult, then it motivates us and energizes us to be able to accomplish. You want to have a great marriage in life? You think it's not going to take work? You're mistaken. You want to raise teenagers? You think it's not going to take work and be painful? Of course it is. And you can actually see where in your life do you really exert yourself? Because I promise you, if you're not exerting yourself in a certain area in life, you're not growing in that area. Because there's no way to get that muscle big unless you lift more weight, unless you push yourself. And that goes for everything in life. And at the end of the day, if we know that beforehand, we do not have to go through pain at all. We get to grow through pain. That's got to be the goal. And I knew it. So I get my drawings together, put them in a book. Andy sends his drawings to Disney. I send my drawings to Disney. A couple weeks go by. I get a call and it's Andy on the phone. I'm like, hey man, what's up? He's like, you're not going to believe this. He was home, and I was home in New York. He was home. It was like midway through the year, Christmas break. And he calls me. He's like, I just got a call from someone at Disney. I'm like, yeah, what'd they say? He goes, I got the internship. I'm like, you got it. That's amazing. Congratulations. He's like, but they didn't call you yet, did they? I'm like, no, but they could be trying to call me right now. I got to hang up. We didn't have call waiting back then.
ah,
I hang up the phone. I'm pacing in the dining room back and forth. My mom comes in at that moment. She's like, what happened? I'm like, Mom, Andy just got the call from Disney. She's freaking out. She's walking back and forth and pacing in the dining room with me. And Disney doesn't call. The phone's not ringing. I'm like, Mom, you paid the phone bill, didn't you? There is a dial tone, right? So I was feeling nervous and I picked up the phone myself and dialed the head of Disney. Who does that? Well, I did. Because when there's something you want in your life, you'll do anything to get it. You should write that down too. If there's something you really want in your life, you will do anything to get it. Underline anything. I'll do anything to get it. So I called up the head of Disney and he's on the phone. He goes, hi, Saul. I'm like, yeah, this is Saul Blinkoff. I wanted to find out about the internship. He's like, Saul, I have your name on a list. I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah, you didn't make it. I go, what? He goes, yeah, I'm sorry, you didn't make it. I go, well, what about Andy? He goes, yeah, Andy made it. You didn't. And I was very discouraged. It was a bittersweet moment in my life. Sweet, I was happy for my best friend. Bitter, my dream was shattered. Andy is going to Disney World. Marla, what do they call Disney World? They call it the happiest place on earth, right? Well, that's where Andy's going. I'm going back to Ohio in the wintertime, what I felt was the most depressing place on earth. And I get back there and I'm walking the halls of the school and people are coming up to me, Blinkoff, what are you doing here? Oh, you didn't make it. Oh, okay. I was known as the guy that was friends with the guy that got into Disney. I became known as the guy who didn't get his dream, who didn't get what he really, really wanted. And I felt like a failure. I felt like a loser. And then I came up with a brilliant way to take that feeling of being a failure away. And you guys forget everything I've said up until now. You walk out of here today remembering one thing. If you ever fail in life and you feel like a failure, do what I did, and the feeling of being a failure will go away like that. You know what I did? I gave up. I gave up on the entire dream.
Mhm.
You see, instead of being the person that doesn't get what he really, really wants, I took away the fact that I wanted anything at all. I said, I'll just be an artist. Forget about Disney. It's not for me. It's for Andy. It's for great people. Glenn Keane. It's not for me. I gave up. And 2 weeks later, buddy calls me up and says, Saul, I got tickets to go see a movie. You want to go? I'm like, I'm not in the mood. He goes, but they're free. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go. So I go see a third movie that changes my life. And it's amazing how we see certain movies or hear stories in life at a certain time of what we're going through, and we feel like it speaks right to us, right? Isn't that true? So I see this movie. The movie's a true story about a guy who's 5 feet tall. He doesn't have an ounce of athletic ability, and he wants to play football at Notre Dame. Marla, what movie is it? Rudy. Yeah, Rudy. So if you guys haven't seen the movie Rudy, hit pause and go watch the movie and then just come right back to this. And it's an amazing family movie. It's a true story. The guy's 5 feet tall. He doesn't have an ounce of athletic ability. He wants to play football at one of the greatest universities. If you were friends with the real Rudy Rudiger and he told you his dream was to play football at Notre Dame, you know what you would have told him as his friend? Dude, I love you. Get a new dream. But Rudy was like, yeah, well, we'll just see about that.
Mhm.
And he tries to get into Notre Dame, and what happens? Rejected. Tries a second time, rejected. Third time, rejected. But fourth time, you know, if you look at the movie poster for the movie Rudy, it says, when people tell you dreams don't come true, tell them about Rudy. And he gets in, and tears are streaming down my face because I'm thinking one thing. If an unathletic kid like that could get into Notre Dame with an insane amount of hard work, then what I felt was an untalented artist like me would get into Disney with an insane amount of hard work. And I vowed to never give up again. And every one of you should go find the movie Rudy poster on Google,
Yeah.
print it out, and cross out the name Rudy and write your name. Just write your name. When people tell you dreams don't come true, tell them about, and you write your name on there. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that stops us from achieving our dreams is
That
us.
concludes part one of our two-part series featuring Saul Blinkoff. So inspiring, right? We hope you take Saul's advice and go watch Ruthie. We know we will. And we are so looking forward to being back with part two of his episode featuring more insights and inspiration you just don't want to miss.
Hey, thanks for listening. You can find more entrepreneurial stories and resources at marladiane.com. And while you're there, enjoy my free downloads to uplevel your business and your life. And Instagram. It's my favorite place to hang out. Let's connect there. If you received inspiration from the episode, I'd sure appreciate a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. Until next episode, take care.